This is my Taotao ATM150-A, and today I'm going to be looking into a brake problem, rear brakes. There's a couple of things going on with the rear brake. First of all, the brake lever travels all the way to the handle, and the second problem is the speed at which the brake lever returns to its original position. It's sluggish and slow. The rear brake on the ATM150 is a brake drum, and I'm going to start by looking at the spring mechanism. The first thing I'm going to do is check the position of the retaining nut on the brake cable. That way, if this isn't the problem, by adjusting it, then I can take it back to where it was. Right now it's just under 11 millimeters from the end of the threads. I've turned the nut counterclockwise about 10 half turns or 5 full turns, so that pushed it in about 4 millimeters, and now I'm going to check and see what the result is. The travel looks good now, but I still have a slight sluggishness on the return of the brake lever to its original position. Now that I've taken a closer look, I see some gunk and probably some lubricant covered with dust and dirt on the bottom of the brake arm. So I'm going to have a look at that, and to do that I'm going to go ahead and take off the retaining nut. Could be just the problem with the brake lever return, could be just a lack of lubricant there. So here's what it looks like with the retaining nut off and the brake arm disconnected from the brake cable bolt. What I'm finding is that the brake arm's not impeded in any way. It's got a spring and it's returning just fine. So that's not the problem. This is what I was afraid of. I tested the lever, the brake lever, and the brake cable without the spring on it, and so what I'm finding is when I push it in, I feel a lot of friction inside the sheath, and it's probably the original factory grease that is hardened up in there. So I'm going to have to clean out the brake cable sheath and clean off the brake cable and reinstall it. This is basically uncharted territory for me. I couldn't find anything on YouTube or the web about how to adjust or fix a brake cable, especially on a Taotao ATM150, so bear with me while I figure this out. But first thing I'm going to do is take off the front plastics that are in front of the instrument cluster so I can get at the rear brake cable. There's one screw in the front and 4 on this side. 1, 2, 3, and 4. I just realized the mirrors are going to have to come off as well. For the mirrors you'll need a 14mm wrench. Now I've got the mirrors off, time to pop off the plastic. Okay, I see it now. So you have to pull the brake cable sheath like this, and then it pops out. Like so. Alright, I can definitely tell you it's the grease because there's just an incredible amount of friction between the brake cable and the sheath. The problem is it's a sealed system. The brake cable and the sheath are inseparable because it's the way it's manufactured. You've got the pin on the brake lever end, and then you have the bolt on the brake arm end, and neither of these can come off. I mean, they're permanent. So the best shot at this is probably to try to get some lubricant in there from the brake lever end. I don't know how that's going to work, but we're going to try it. First, I'm going to try some brake cleaner to break up the Chinese grease, and then try to get some white lithium grease in there. The last time I did this was on my 50cc Taotao, and I made a total mess with brake cleaner because I got it all over the plastics. So I'm going to be a little more careful this time, not as sloppy, cover up the plastics, and see if I can get some brake cleaner down in here. There's a little grommet, needs to come out of the way. I think there's enough space, we'll try it. Alright, so the first step I took was to take my trusty multi-tool and crimp the end of the brake cleaner spray tube. So now it's, I don't know if you can see, it's quite flat, it's very narrow. So I think that'll spray it inside the brake cable sheath. Basically what I did was try to make a funnel. I don't have anything else to make a funnel, so this is my best shot. I'm also covering up my instrument cluster for overspray. And I highly recommend a pair of safety glasses because this is a high pressure jet of brake cleaner and it's going into a very small hole and it's probably going to go everywhere. Alright, I've got my safety glasses on. Just gotta spray slowly. Don't use full pressure. Wow. I tell you, that worked. Look at that. I mean, there's still some friction, but it's almost frictionless now. To be honest, I don't know how much brake cleaner to put in there. This is very experimental. So far, it's probably about a milliliter that's gone in. I'm going to shoot a little more in there just to make sure, and then follow up with some white lithium grease spray. It's definitely where it should be now. Alright, now I have some white lithium grease, spray can. I'm going to do the same crimping action on the tube. Alright. I don't know how effective this is. It's a bit thick and it's hard to get it in that very narrow space. Probably the most effective part was getting some brake cleaner in there. And we'll see, it may have to be repeated. Now it's time to piece everything back together. Got the front put back together. Time for the rear. It's kind of hard to see everything that's going on because the shock's in the way, but bear with me. First, I'm going to put the spring back on. There's a retaining pin in the brake arm. Oops, backwards. Sorry about that. It's about 14.5 millimeters. Very good. Travel is good. Return release is good. Fixed. I'm going to do one last riding test just to make sure that the rear brake's functioning properly. Should be good to go. Flawless.